ničím teda nic moc. To mám někoho.
Raz, dva, to tam nejde ještě.
Halo, 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 halo. Halo.
Ještě počkej, jestli máme techniku.
Částečně. Teďka je toho moc. Ještě, aby to jako jelo tady. Halo? No, to už vypadá... Vizuálně to vypadá dobře. Jestli to je sní dobře, to zjistím. Akorát je tam ta půlminutová latence.
Já něco říkám, dobrý den vážení, jak se tady máte?
Ne. Respektive jsme online, ale nemáme nikoho připojeného, protože to tajný.
Dobrý, ale to se bude nahrávat.
To se nahrává, to se ostřihneš ten
Jo,
začátek.
dobrý. A pošleš mi ještě ten kód, teda link, ať to můžu... Nevím, to je jedno.
Ještě to, teďka jsme tam začala mluvit teprve.
A už to funguje líp?
Trošku stále.
Raz, dva, tři, raz, dva, tři, raz, dva, tři. Raz, dva, tři.
A jako ne, to úplně ideálně, ale to úplně ideálně nebude, ale
Dobrý.
pohodě.
Kamkoliv to můžeš poslat, nevím. Teams tady nějak.
Teams, já jsem přihlášen na Aničku, jak mi bylo blbý ti to posílat jen tak, aniž bych se zeptal.
Pohodě.
Tak dobře. Jak se na Teams posílá zpráva? So, for the purposes of the recording, I will need you to speak into this microphone, and I need to ask you whereabouts do you want to stand or sit or so I can adjust the camera.
Okay. The camera is there.
Yeah.
One of
I
us
can just
has.
wide.
We can.
Is it possible to use also this microphone or not? So one of us
I
use this one.
I think this one is actually broken. It captures the audio from like pretty wide area, so you don't have to have it very close.
Okay.
But it would be better if the one who talks actually holds it.
Okay then. Okay.
Okay, so will you be standing or sitting?
Yes, I think you'll be standing.
Okay, so around here?
Yes.
Okay,
If it's better for you.
yeah, sure.
Okay.
It doesn't very matter for me. So.
Okay. Bunu split yapacağız. Çalışıyor mu acaba? Projelere. Ama onları biraz hızlı geliyor. Binlerce var. Evet.
Ama
Yani çünkü manifestoyu da çok merak ediyorlar. Adam özellikle söyledi, onu da anlatayım.
Okay, göstereyim. Bak bu arada manifestoydu. Evet. Bak şöyle çok hızlı gidiyor. Bakma durağını ve şeyi biraz istersen bir şey anlatmayalım.
Neyi? Maxi'yi. Sadece gösterelim istersen. Hızlıca.
Ama işte learning
Tamam.
theory of existence biraz işte ben notified forces falan demek iyi olur gibi düşünüyorum.
Tamam.
Girişi nasıl yapalım?
Bir proje sen, bir proje ben gibi yapalım o zaman.
Ama senin işte projeler nelerde bitiyor? Şuradan görebilirsin işte.
Tamam. Buradan mı başlayayım?
Şunu yapalım. Sen kıstın mı?
Kıstım onu. Buradan mı başlayayım? Söylemek istiyorum da bu Architecture Review'da asıl biz bir aydınlanma yaşadık hani. Onu en sonunda projeleri anlattıktan sonra. Tamam. Çok kısa söyleyeceğim canım. Tamam, ben projeleri daha hızlı geçebilirim yani. Tamam, bir sen bir ben anlatalım projeleri.
Okay, we would like to. We are happy that you are here, Savins and Ural. You have great guests. You all know that you work on the pavilion in Venice now, but it's not all what you've done before. I've read something about MoMA and this one, etc. So it's really, really interesting. And about the topic you will hear on the lecture, I don't want to take your time. And if anyone here doesn't know it yet, tomorrow we start a workshop with you about the school. So if any of you is still interested, you can take part in it as well. You are all invited, not only students, if you want to. And so the hall is yours, and thank you for coming.
Thank you for the invitation.
Is it working or this one we need only for the record, no? Okay, because otherwise everyone can hear. So, whether it works or not. Thank you very much for inviting us. We are so happy to be in Brno and sharing these projects first, and then we're going to share the pavilion, Turkish pavilion that we've been like very densely working for the last couple of months for the Venice Biennale. But before going on to that, we'll start with our projects, and maybe we can start with this MoMA PS1 thing, which is kind of like a milestone in our career. This is the Modern Art Museum in Istanbul. It's demolished now, but it was 10 years ago. They were the old dockyards, and the project is a collaboration between MoMA PS1 and this Istanbul Modern Art Museum. It's called Young Architects Program. That time we were young, we were 30 years old, and then we were nominated for this garden to make an installation. But then, because the program has been done in New York for 15 years, we were kind of looking for a new idea of installation, but everything was done. I mean, we had an idea, oh no, they did it. Another one, they did this one as well. So then we started to think, okay, the only way that we do something like kind of original is to make something site-specific. And this is you see it's next to the Bosphorus, but you see the fences there. So it's, even though you are next to Bosphorus, it's customs zone. So the all like cruise ships, they park there. That's why you cannot go to the seaside. So we decided that maybe we can take these, because we cannot go to the seaside, but we see it, but maybe we can take the take something about sea to the courtyard, but what would be that? So then we realized that what is existing on the site, we decided to think about it, and then we realized that there is this small hole in the in the courtyard, and then we saw that the sea continues under the slab. So the slab is like on piles, in this section, but this was just an assumption before the competition, because it's like an invited competition, so we represented our ideas. And then we thought that instead of making let's make the simple thing to create shadow, because the brief was about creating shadow in the courtyard and seating units. So the simple thing is like an umbrella, but instead of doing like umbrellas anchoring on the slab, why don't we let them float on the water, so that we'll have the movement of the sea, because we are kind of blocked between the sea and the courtyard. So we'll have the movement of the sea in the courtyard.
Maybe I can just add something. Here, all this, also the Venice Biennale and the topic in here, we try to always look at the existing, what is existing there, and try to make the existing part of the project. There's a very nice quotation of Buckminster Fuller, don't fight with forces, instead of use them, he says. I think as architects we always try to fight with forces, especially the gravity. We make cantilevers and we fight with gravity, and we make skyscrapers and we fight with wind. But maybe, he says, we don't have to fight and we can use them. So here the main idea, of course we wrote that quotation like 10 years later, I guess. We didn't know anything about Fuller during we are doing this project. But we choose not to fight with gravity or the waves. We thought that maybe they can be part of the project and we can use them instead of anchoring the thing on the concrete and trying to resist to the winds and gravity and etc. We let them snow. And it was very interesting because we had to work with divers, and there was lots of gray zones that we didn't know. We didn't know anything about floating because it's a completely different engineering. We didn't know how to work with divers, the movement of the Bosphorus, and etc. etc.
So this has to be kind of a collaborative study between like coastal engineers, divers, us, and the museum, the curators, and they were like, okay, are we gonna really do that? And then finally, when we did the first prototype, and even Oral and I was like, okay, what if they don't move? And the divers were like, okay, we're gonna shake them if they don't move, don't worry.
Yeah, we were too young, so everybody was trying to kind of help us.
And were like hugging each other, okay, they're moving.
Yeah, at the end of the project. So yeah, it was very interesting. It was really break point for our career, because we learned lots of things from this project.
And also we were the contractors. You know,
that's
the worst part, because you know in Turkish, I don't know how is it in Czech, but in Turkey it's literally kind of separated, design and application. But this thing, the contract comes from New York, and you have to be the contractor of the project as the designer.
And there's the limit of money, which was like $75,000, and you have to be inside it. If you over budget, then you have to pay it from your pocket, but we had nothing in our pocket. So it was also very challenging for this. So since we used all the money for divers and etc., we didn't have any money for seating. So that was a problem. But in Turkey, we are lucky that we had like millions of tires, because we have a really huge second-hand.
You can get them for free.
Used tires. And our office was very close to this Bosphorus, and there was lots of fishing nets around the office. So we thought that maybe we can cover a used tire with a fishing net, and we can make furniture out of it. So people can easily move them towards the shadow.
It was interesting because before we put them, it was because it's in the courtyard of the museum. It's like, you know, art. People were like looking, okay, something's moving, trying to look for some kind of label, because they were thinking that there are pistons or something. And then when we put these things, then it was no longer an artwork. People just feel more closer.
It became a space to spend time and to do different activities. Also kids, they are extremely imaginative. And also since it was part of the museum's program, there was some other shows and exhibitions during this. So yes. So second project, Lost Barrier. We will. The first one was too long to explain, but these ones will be faster, I guess. This project was in Maxi, and after these Gezi protests in Istanbul in 2013, almost the same year that we are doing these umbrellas, we had a very huge protest to protect the park in the middle of the city center. and people occupied the park to protect it.
Because the government wants to make a shopping mall instead of the park. But in Turkey, it's not like Bruno, you know, we have very few parks in Istanbul because it's a very density, 18 million people. And this was a park from the Republic period, and like one of the biggest green spaces in the very touristic center in Taksim.
And then the Maxi said that after the Gezi protest, there was this huge like production from artists, protest people, architects, etc. They wanted to bring all this energy into the Zaha Hadid's museums in Rome. And they asked us to bring the public space, the feeling of the public space, into this very like sterile, clean space. And at that time, our public space was like that. Everywhere there was this crowd control barriers because the police had to control people in order to not to make protests around the city. And our office was somewhere around here. So we had to cross all these barriers to reach our office. And then, since the task was very difficult, because we are not artists, it's not easy for an architect to bring a public space into a museum. It's absurd for us. So we thought that maybe, since there are these layers of barriers, because there is this construction barrier you see at the behind, blue one, and then the police barrier. So it's everywhere was barriers.
Yes, it's not only for security, but also for construction. That has been the main industry in Turkey for the last 30 decades, years, sorry.
But at some point, people got used to these barriers, and they become the part of the daily life. They become something like a public furniture, because everybody was using it to sit and also to connect their, you see, facade to the barrier, or dry peppers on the barriers. Okay, so the concept of barrier became completely something different since it's everywhere. So we thought that maybe we can just bring the barriers inside the museum by using the same detail, because they use cable ties to connect them. And we took all these barriers and put them in the middle of two galleries, so that this continuous movement somehow was interrupted by these barriers. You can still pass through the galleries, but there is this weird thing suddenly happens to you, and then you pass through it. But of course, it was quite difficult for us, because it's something like in between the art and architecture. So we still ask questions if it fits the concept or not.
So this one is in London. It was in 2015 again. It was again an installation and invited competition in the Royal Academy of Arts building. The idea was to make a ceramic installation, because the sponsors was ceramics company. And then the idea was to make an installation inside the building, but because we had some, you know, third world country problems, like visa problems, we couldn't go and see the building, and the building is, you know, like a old historical one.
Yes, the idea was to make an installation for number 1, 2, or 3, but 4 is outside the building, so we will come to that.
And then and then we started to look at the Google Street View images, like to see, okay, what kind of a place is that? And then we see that, okay, people keep on sitting on these barriers, you know.
So this is number 4, by the way.
Number 4. Whenever you look at it, you see someone sitting on the barriers, like having a cigarette or trying to eat their snacks.
So this is the space, but this is not the part of the competition. The competition was for inside the building, but since we haven't seen the inside the building, and we couldn't understand it from the photos and the videos, we just was able to understand this situation. There is a problem of seating there. Because everybody in different times, different seasons, wanted to sit somewhere, but because of the existing barriers there, they somehow trying to interact with the space, but cannot. So we thought that it's very interesting, because there is an empty space there. Because in Istanbul, if there is an empty space, we have to fill it with something. We can drink tea there, or you can do something, but we have to fill it. That's our like reflex on the space. So we were quite surprised, since this is a very like busy street, but it's still empty. But anyway, we were like kind of, okay, they are asking for interior, but let's risk it and make something for the exterior, because we thought that they would never choose us because they are English and they would never demolish these barriers, you know, since it's a listed building. Yeah. Because our project was about putting something completely alien to the site. The name of the project is Unexpected Hill. So you see the facade of the building, and then with the ceramics we make a hill, and we try to transform the space into a habitable playground.
But then, you know, it's another absurd idea to make a ceramic installation in London. It rains all the time, and people drink at night, and they climb on the ceramics, and there is no security, nothing here. And in London, even they lock the parks at 6 o'clock, but there is no security here. So it's 24 hours public, the only
yeah, so we were quite confident that they wouldn't choose us, so we can do whatever we want. But somehow they really liked the idea, transforming this non-space into a habitable installation. And also they somehow got the permission to remove the barriers. We still don't know how they did it, but they were able to do it, and we were lucky to build the project. But this is a photo from the first day. Immediately the kids started to climb there, and we were like very, what's going to happen? Are they going to fall? Because there is no control, there is no guard or nothing there. But luckily, after like 6 months, nothing happened. And the good thing that these are like the fancy photos, of course, but these are the photos that we captured from Instagram. People really used it. And at the end of the project, they closed the street to traffic and made a festival around the pavilion, because the street somehow transformed to a very public space because of this alien thing in the middle of these buildings.
What was weird was in London, you know, that you have a lot of parks, but then you have to like walk 15 minutes. But these people, during their lunch break, they need somewhere to sit and just have a smoke, that kind of a pop-up public space. But they don't really have that idea of pop-up public space, which we really have it in Istanbul, because in Istanbul we really don't have that, you know, huge parks. So we have to turn every corner into a kind of a public space we can utilize for any kind of event. So the other one is about, so this was, and then in Turkey, we have this open call for being the curator of the Venice Biennale Pavilion since 2016. And since then, we applied and applied.
This is the fourth time, by the way. This is the fourth time. We lose 3 times, and this is the fourth time they choose us. I think they thought that we have to choose them, otherwise they wouldn't go away. So this was our, like, I remember his second proposal. We have earthquake all the time. We have also a recent earthquake, but earthquake is like every like daily issue in Turkey. So for Istanbul, we are expecting a really huge earthquake because of the movement of the continents. The Arabic Peninsula is just moving us up, and Russia just press us down, like politics. It's very similar to the politics. So we have earthquakes all the time. Okay, so this is the North Anatolian fault, the red one you see, and it generates earthquakes all the time. So the last one is you see here is 1999, and the next one will be in Istanbul, and it will be quite big, bigger than 7 magnitude. So anyway, we decided to make something about earthquake, and these are the details. We will need lots of emergency housing, shelters, and etc., all these numbers. Everybody knows about these numbers in Turkey, but still we don't do anything. But the thing about related to architecture is that after the earthquake, we always put these containers for the emergency housing thing. And even we are an earthquake country, we don't have an emergency housing shelter. For example, Japan has it, Shigeruban, you know, he sent everywhere. But we don't have anything. We have these containers. And at the end of the earthquake, these containers are abandoned, they become trash. So we thought maybe we can do something about this. But after we investigated Istanbul, like we focused on here, the main problem was not this box. The main problem is that even we have the box, there is a still big problem about gathering areas. So
So where to put the containers after the earthquakes? The problem is where to put them.
So this is a very shocking thing, because the gathering areas, they were like 500 at the beginning in 1999. But right now we have 77, maybe even less.
Because after the biggest earthquake in 1999, everyone was kind of shocked, and they announced plenty of areas to put tents in Istanbul because in order to make preparation. But as the time passes and the earthquake doesn't happen, everyone forgets about it, and they kind of privatized all these zones to make like shopping halls, malls, like
we make these things. So we fill these areas with this very like fancy buildings, very like everybody.
So 70% of them was in 30 years. 70% of the areas we can put tents were kind of privatized.
So maybe we thought that we can, instead of making a realistic project, we can make a speculation. So we thought that instead of putting something on the land, we can put something on the water, because we only have water to put things. It's not privatized yet. So there are some advantages of water, of course. It's empty for now, and there is no need for infrastructure. It's flat, because Istanbul is like all hills. You have to flat them to put these containers. And in terms of logistics, it's very wise to put on water, because you can bring things very easily with ships, and there is no ownership problem, because in all these earthquakes you put container development on some place, but the owner of the land at some point comes there and says that, okay, get out of here because I have to build something new. So that's also a big issue. Anyway, so we made this research about tsunami and where to put them, and then we decided to put it in Golden Horn because it's an inland. There is no tsunami there. There is no big waves there. It's easy to bring them with ships and etc. So at some point, we focused on the unit itself at the end, because this was the main idea at the beginning, but we came it like in a very long path.
Because after we lost the Biennale thing again with this idea of earthquake. And
because they said that the earthquake is not a hot topic in Europe.
Yes,
so
in Europe they don't have earthquakes. So and then, but that year it was Istanbul Design Biennale, and it was created by Jan Boylan from Belgium. And he saw this, and then he was like, okay, we should take this to the Design Biennale in Istanbul. And then because the subject was School of Schools of that Design Biennale, we turned this into an interdisciplinary, because we also teach at the university, interdisciplinary studio with architects, sociologists, and civil engineers. We were 4 tutors, 2 of us architects, 1 professor from sociology, 1 professor from civil engineering, and 40 students all together mixed. And then we made this huge research-based design studio. At the end, everybody was fighting because civil engineers were, okay, guys, why are you losing time? Let's just calculate. And sociologists was like, okay, we shouldn't do anything without just analyzing everything. And architects, you know, they want to design every time. But at the end, it was, I mean, they were kind of finding a new language, a common language to develop. This was the part we developed at the office. The school part was like a master plan.
And the idea is, after the earthquake, the most crucial things is that you have to store these things like very wisely, because you don't have a lot of space to for the storage, and also it's very important to install them very fastly on site. So we made a foldable unit, which is very easy to transport, which is very easy to store in a warehouse, and which is very easy to install on site. But of course, on paper, it's easy to show all these things. But somehow we found some sponsors, and they said, okay, we can build it. And with the sponsors, we were able to build it, make a prototype. Not like the final thing, but a prototype which shows how to unfold it and put it on the floating thing.
Every 2 years we have a huge earthquake in all around the country, so we can reuse these units. I mean, we can use it in Istanbul now and then in Kahramanmaraş, and just change the location and reuse it. The idea was that not only on water, because being on water idea, you know, it's again absurd. I mean, why would you be on water after the earthquake? But the idea was to speculate that, okay, the gathering areas were kind of privatized, but so this is the result.
And the idea was putting all the infrastructure into the pontoon. Here, the pontoon is concrete, it's fiber concrete, and the rest on the lightweight steel construction. So then it was exhibited during the design biennale. So these are some images.
And now it is now being exhibited in Danish Design Museum and Maxi right now.
But not the big thing, of
Not
course,
the big
the
thing, the
models,
project, yeah.
the models. And these are like experiments on foldable furnitures and all these spaces, the renderings and the real thing. And then
And this is House of Chickens.
here the existing thing was
project.
chicken,
Yeah,
which is
the
very
chickens were existing, and then they were the most challenging user because they do not give feedback, and they do not demand. So, and they do not pay. That's why they don't have to use anything they don't like, because as people we have to use it if you don't, even if you don't like it. And they do not adapt. I mean, they have their routines, and they can die if you just ruin that routines. So it was a very difficult project, and there is this crazy, I mean, a good sense, crazy, neydi adam? Director and artist Kutlu Ataman. He decided to spend all his money to make a farm of architects and architecture and art. So he had this farm, and he wanted every building to be designed by architects in the farm. And then he had this very famous building designed by famous architects in Turkey, the first building in the farm, his house. And then they made a master plan, and they decided that each building for animals in the master plan will be designed by architects. And they made a short list, and we were the youngest in the short list, so we had the chicken coop. But we were like, okay, chicken coop, that's a very cool project. We were very kind of excited. But then in the first meeting, I was like, okay, what if they don't use it? And he says, okay, you cannot build anything, they cannot use it, so you don't take any risks. And we decided, okay, we shouldn't take any risks, but then we made a research about it. You know, chickens are like, they have their routines. And mostly in the US, in this do-it-yourself culture, people make chicken coops, and there is this huge literature, how chicken lives, what do they do, like the Neufert of chickens, you know, that Neufert book for people. They have never heard of
But there is not like one book. It's distributed
exactly.
knowledge, so we have to collect it from everywhere, and also we spoke with the local farmers, understand their habits and etc. And we had these 12 diagrams. Which was crucial for us. First one was again earthquake, because that was also an earthquake zone. Yeah. So we used triangles, which is the most robust structure, and then the modular structure for easy maintenance, because since it's like in the middle of nowhere, it had to be maintained very easily. It had to be cleaned very easily, and socializing for chickens is crucial. They are really social animals. Natural ventilation is again very crucial, because they poo inside the coop, so it smells, so there has to be a constantly wind, but it shouldn't pass through them. The wind, it has to be at the top of the structure. Daylight is very crucial, because while they are incubating, they shouldn't see the sun directly, otherwise they get stressed and their egg is not good. And providing shadow is important, because during the summertime it's plus 40, and during the winter time it's minus 20. It's a very difficult climate, so it snows a lot. So we have to elevate all the structure for both the snow protection and also protection from the predators, because predators can dig the structure and get under the coop. So if we elevate it, we solve that problem. And sleeping roosting bars, it's very interesting that they poo while they are sleeping. So, and they sleep like at the top of something, normally on the tree. So we had to put them like tribune, not like vertical things.
So they don't poo
on each other. And then the last thing, the most important, the collecting eggs. The humans shouldn't enter the coop constantly, because they can bring disease. So if they get the disease, all the chickens die. And we put them here, so you can reach them from the exterior. So it's like, I will show the image very fastly. This is the structure, the modular thing. It had to fit into a truck, everything here. They built it in 4 days, because it was already built in a factory, and they just assembled it on the place. All these openings are for cleaning and ventilation, and this socializing thing is important. Natural ventilation, daylight control, you see these are the incubating things. So this is the sun on the opposite direction, which is important. Shadow was important. Snow protection, again, this canopy is for this, protecting for the predators, both the birds and the wolves. And these sleeping roosting bars you see here, they go on it, so it has to be like an angle. Circulation for both humans and chickens. And it's very simple details so that it can be maintained easily on a remote site. And this was like a surprise thing. You open the box and you see if there is an egg or not, and then continue. So sometimes they complain about it, the humans, not the chickens, but the humans sometimes complain because they have to open all the boxes.
They were like, okay, architects.
Yeah. Anyway. So yes, these are the chickens. They look happy. They haven't died yet. So it's been like 5 years. They are still alive.
But you know, architects, they do really kind of experimental things in this area because the owner, artist director, he doesn't really interrupt of this like creative thinking of architects. That's why we were like kind of proud. They are like living for 5 years. And
yeah, because some of the buildings collapsed. Literally, they collapsed. Some of the experiments. So we are happy that this hasn't collapsed yet. We are happy. Okay, now we are coming to the Biennale, but before we will just show a few buildings, normal buildings. So this is the core project of the Biennale. It's the swimming pool, you see. It's in the middle of a public forest, but the thing is that the last municipality transformed part of this forest into houses for mayors of Istanbul. So these were private. These are like small villas, you see. And this was their swimming pool. This is the existing building. So this was like for a very privileged people. So this new municipality, the leftish, quite leftish one, after they came, they said that, okay, we are opening this campus to the public and we will open these buildings to the public. And they came to us for this particular two buildings. One of them is this one. And they said, okay, we have this swimming pool. And the mayor was saying that I am telling all the staff in the municipality to swim in the pool, but they said we don't have any time to swim in the pool. So what are we going to do with the pool, they asked. And there were these birds again inhabiting inside the pool. So they didn't know what to do because it was like a bomb. You cannot, I mean, transform this thing very easily. And so we said that since this, and they were asking for a events hall. We thought that the section of the pool is very similar to like an how you say? Auditorium. Yes, auditorium. So we thought that maybe we without touching the existing concrete, we can use the same section. And we transformed it into auditorium without demolishing this roof and all these ceramics. But we will explain this later, I guess, for the Biennale project. But the main idea, the main powerful idea about looking at the existing building and how to use it, how to not to, without demolishing it, and also keeping the memory of it, because we also didn't want to lose the memory of this private swimming pool, because it's a very interesting story to tell to the people. At some point, this public area was used for the mayors of Istanbul. It was privatized and it was for privileged people. We also wanted to tell this story to the people. Another building was this warehouse. Again, we kept all the steel frames and transformed it into an exhibition space this time.
And this was another, this was like 5 years ago, the first existing structure we kind of transformed, renovated. This was again an ugly shopping mall, but they built it as a shopping mall, and then the municipality started to use it as a community center. And it was, although the building is ugly and it doesn't really fit to the community center's special requirements because it has a huge atrium, because in shopping malls you have to like walk around to see all the shops in the atrium. So this atrium it has been transformed into like this with stairs into a public space after the project. But even the building was ugly, they were using it, and then we did that renovation project. So the funny thing is, in 2019 we were one of the finalists of the Architectural Review's Emerging Architects Awards, and then we were invited to Netherlands to make a presentation with other like 12 teams. And then we made the kind of this presentation. And at the end, the jury was like, okay, you started with the mayor and then you ended with the chickens. So how do you kind of connect them in your career? And
so what is the main idea of
what was the main idea of your office? We were like looking at each other. And then we lost it. And then we kept thinking, because then we saw the presentations of other younger offices. They were like, one of them, they only did educational buildings. The other one, they only did open space projects, like landscape projects. They kind of became expert on whatever they did. But in our case, we couldn't even become an expert because we did a chicken coop, we wouldn't do it again. And then we did kind of this like ceramic installation, we wouldn't do it again. All the swimming pool and etc. And we kept thinking, okay, there should be something that connects these. That was how I think the carry-back theory of architecture was born. A year ago, we were like making this Instagram post about this pool project. And I mean, this pool project, you know, this ugly yellow structure, in any kind of contemporary architect in Turkey would paint it to black, even they do this renovation. But we left them like this. And then because we were thinking that, okay, it's not the image, because we know that it would look much better with a darker color. But it's not the image, but it's the story, which really is important in this case. And maybe we should question these images, kind of ossified images and perceptions in our minds we have inherited. So this is how the carry-back theory of architecture started. It was based on a theory of fiction of Ursula Le Guin, and previously a theory of evolution from Elizabeth Fischer in the 70s.
Actually, the theory was born literally in the pool, because we finished the project, we took all the photos, and then we wanted to install them on, put them on Instagram. And I asked Sevince to write a small text with the image. And it took like 10 days to write a text, and I couldn't understand what was she doing. And at that point, she was writing this theory of carrier-back theory of architecture. So it was in this it's Turkish, you can't understand, but you can see this Ursula Le Guin at least. So it began with an Instagram post. But I thought that it took 10 days to write this post, then we should maybe use it again for the Biennale project and transform this Instagram post into a theory for this Biennale.
Because the pool is only the symbol of a huge stock of buildings from that era of like richness, in quotation, in Turkey in the last 30 years. Because we built a lot of buildings, and most of them is abundant. So we were thinking that this could be a general theory for that unused building stock. So we wrote a manifesto of 15 articles, although the ages of manifesto has been gone to at all, but we were like, okay, maybe we should try that. And it's a manifesto with question marks, not like full stops. And then the first is theory.
It's first Elizabeth Fischer writes it about evolution. She says that maybe we always see this image of man killing animals. It's this heroic moment where the man kills animals, and all these stories are explained on the walls of the caves. But she asks the question, what if this is not the story? Maybe there is another story which can be told with this carrier back, because before hunting this thing, humans were actually vegetarians. They would they used to collect vegetables, and in order to collect these vegetables, they must have these bags. And collecting something is more a collaborative thing instead of this heroic thing. So if we change this weapon with the carrier bag, the whole writing of the history is suddenly changed. At the beginning, it's not a man's story. It's a collaborative thing. It's man and woman all together. Also, it's kind of connected to the feminist theory. And then also, it's not about hero anymore. It's about the collaborative working of people all together. And then Ursula takes this theory into fiction, and she says that maybe we always write these novels about heroes, but does it have to be always like that? She asks the question, maybe we can also expand the story with the explaining all these, not the heroic thing, but also
the ups and downs and daily life, and not only the success, but also the failures and etc. So when we, at first, when we kind of connected to architecture, we were like, well, we understand it, we ourselves. But whenever we tell someone, what is the real connection between architecture and fiction? We were like, okay, let me tell again, this time it will be. But then, when the time passed, we realized that, okay, the connection is not like so direct, but it's the connection is that we changed the, it's in the scene, we just changed the one tool from weapon to a carrier bag, but then the whole story changes. And architecture now, in these ages of crisis, it has a really fundamental change. And we see that change in worldwide architecture scene as well, but maybe this theory would be kind of be related to the changes in architecture itself as well. Now we will be telling you about it.
So it's not about hero architects or heroic buildings like these monuments, but more like the story behind the project. The pool is very connected because at the end of the image of the pool it's not striking, but the story behind the pool is kind of much more important than the finished object. So we try to connect the idea with this storytelling. And also, in order to convince all these municipality not to demolish the building, we had to explain the story behind the idea. We told them, if you don't demolish this thing, you can explain the story to the public by telling, okay, this building was used before privately and for a very privileged group of people, but now we transform this thing into a public thing. So this story is much more important than the buildings itself. Okay, so there are all these topics that you also have on the papers, these 15 topics. This first was story, second theory, and then this addiction comes.
So this addiction, it's a kind of an economic theory, because construction, an economist, professor of economics, explained it like this. Because construction is not like a productive thing. Once, it's not like a factory. You build a factory and then you keep producing. But construction, you build it, you sell it, and it's done. So you have to produce it again and again. So it kind of makes an addiction. So these two not buildings, but campuses, like settlements from Turkey. The one in the left, it's very famous. This one was one of the most read news of 2019 in Dezin, you know, this famous design portal. This is in Mudurnu, in Bolu. It's a very beautiful, like a green area with villages and etc. And then they built these 700 identical chateaus, and then they're abandoned because they couldn't sell it. And the one in the right, it's even more weird, because it was the transformation of an existing huge
forest area
that has been done in the beginning of Republic. The founder of the Republic. It's called Atatürk Forest Farm. And then they demolished it and turned it into the theme park, like an entertainment park, the biggest one in Europe. But
they spent $800 million.
Yes.
Almost like $1 billion.
But
so
the reason the Republic period chose this area to make a forest was that it was a swamp area, that it's not constructible. And then these people, the municipality, they built the like roller coasters and etc. And they couldn't use it in the 15th day. They have to close it because, you know, it's on a swamp area. Even in the test drive with the mayor, like making poses, and then the roller coaster was like broken, and he was like on top trying to get down with ropes and etc. So it was.
It was a really. It's a real story. I mean, these are real stories because it's also very difficult to explain it in 2 minutes. But the facts behind these buildings, the campuses, is very crucial to understand in order to not to make the same mistakes. Because the finished thing, the image, okay, is striking, but the story is much more important to get. You see these, it's like a movie.
A scene. Yeah, it's like a movie scene. It's totally abandoned now. So that's where the ghost stories, the title of the exhibition, come from. So this is the fourth, I think, article of the manifesto about ghosts. And we were saying, okay, this theory is about revealing the story of the neglected ones, because the ghosts, you don't see them anymore, but they're there, and you have to do something with them, apart from demolishing it. And then we made this open call, because we thought that this idea was of abandoned building was not only interesting for architects, but for everyone. And then we made this open call, and it really got a huge interest from all over Turkey, because people were really kind of, even if they're not architects, they were into these abandoned things and they're not used, they just share photos. And then we realized that there's a huge YouTube thing, both internationally and nationally, about this abandoned settlements. YouTuber goes there and their videos watched like 1 million times. So these are some projects from the open call.
So you see this is a YouTube video existing. We didn't send the photographer to take the pictures of these existing buildings, and we all used the existing material because the whole idea of the project is about the existing. That's why we didn't want to get new photos, get new videos, because there already has lots of videos and photos by the public, took by the public. So these are like photos from every city of Turkey. We have 81, 82 cities in Turkey. So these buildings are like kind of distributed.
We have like airports, hospital, whatever like facility you.
Yeah, the interesting thing in Turkey is that in every country there are all abandoned buildings. But what is special about Turkey is these typologies. We have airports, amusement parks, like these chateaus, shopping malls, hospitals, schools, houses. So it's very wide. So the main idea of the Biennale this year is the laboratory of future. So we thought that these buildings are really the laboratory of future for Turkey, because we somehow have to look at them and have to, because we are out of money in Turkey, our economy is going down, we are losing in the world our resources, we don't have this luxury to build new things, so we have to look at the existing things and transform them.
So this is another article. I'm going to move faster. That existing buildings are kind of anthropic. They're open to possibilities. They're kind of chaotic. The contractors, they don't really like it, existing buildings, because you know every stone comes with a problem. But this chaos, we should learn from this chaos and etc. So we can move on. This is the expiry date. So we say, okay, expiry date is for heroes, not for buildings. And this photo is from, again, is in Turkey, a famous ancient site, Aphrodisias, which was found in 1941. This was the village, because no one knows that there was an ancient archaeological site there. The village used all the archaeological things to build all their like houses and coffee shop and etc.
So what we naturally do is to use an existing thing in order to build something new. But this habit has changed dramatically in last 20 years, since we think that we have unlimited resources. We are also questioning how it's changed and what can be done.
And why demolish? Why do we demolish in this chapter? So these 15 things are the 15 chapters of the book, of the exhibition, and also the exhibition sections. We have tables, 15 tables. Each table is with the same name. So this was the famous building, the world's ugliest building in the Google. When you write it, you got this one in Kahramanmaraş, in the earthquake region.
The interesting thing is that at the back you see the building which is being demolished, and at the front this is the cake model of the building. where people get selfies, because it's a very interesting building. Half of the city likes it, but half of the city hates it because because of its ugliness. And when it is being demolished, the bakery here, placed here, makes the model of it and put it there. So everybody is very interesting. The press comes to the city and tells the story of the building. But anyway, at some point they demolish it on the left. It's before the earthquake, by the way. And this is the most robust building in that area. But instead of repairing these all existing buildings, they demolished this building. And after the earthquake, every building around this building was collapsed. So our focus is very distracted. I think that's a very important issue.
And the weird thing is, in order to be able to demolish this building, because it was robust, they had this new regulation of this earthquake zone to repair it. They just declared that, okay, this is an earthquake zone, we need to repair and rebuild the building for 40 hectares zone. And this was the first building they started, and the only building. But instead of spending all this energy on this building, maybe they would have repaired all around the neighborhood, so this wouldn't happen.
So yes, this again connects to this addiction. So we are not building for special needs. We are demolishing and building things for economic reasons in Turkey. That's I think, one of the biggest problems.
So CSI, it's, you know, crime scene investigation. So from now, we look at how new technologies could be used, because, you know, these existing buildings, they're kind of like intimidating for architects, for contractors to work. But with technology, it's much easier. So this is a spot dog, a robot dog of Boston Dynamics, and they use it to just analyze and scan the whole existing structures in a very short time and with a very detailed report. So this is the section we're going to look at how new technologies could be used to for crime scene investigation.
This is forensic architecture. So even an architecture firm can behave like a detective to understand what happened in that space. So I think we are very good at investigating the existing.
And this is the part we will look at concrete, because in Turkey, like in the world, the main material, construction material, is concrete, and Turkey is kind of very successful. It's one of the first countries who exported concrete, and their contractors are like worldwide Turkish contractors. They are like very successful. But then how come this big disaster, earthquake, ended with like almost, we lost more than 50,000 people? Mm-hmm. So here on the right you see the recordings from the earthquake zone, and the concrete is so poor quality, even though Turkey produces exports concrete to Europe, to the world, and the construction is so poor quality. And on the left it's from the 70s, a video of how cement is done.
So we are a very good concrete exporter. We have very good contractors who are very famous worldwide, but we have this video. So this is again a very conflicting. Again, it's about time, because we do construction extremely fast and extremely poor quality to earn much more money.
Because the main reason of construction is not to have the safest building, but to have the most profitable one in the quickest way. Mm-hmm. So the repair shop is the other section. These were all the sections before the earthquake, but then before the earthquake we were thinking, but who would be interested in concrete? Like a very nerd architects maybe, but then after the earthquake, even my grandparents, they are like, okay, concrete with C30 and qualifications and etc. So this is in repair shop. We will again look at technology, how we can repair this whole building stock.
Because this on the left is again repairing from Turkey. You see this is a concrete building and a steel structure attached to it. It's not like a temporary thing. This is the permanent solution for repairing the building. Okay, so again, it's very important to include architects and engineers all together to this repair thing. And again, we have very good technologies like these fiber things. We are very good at exporting this fiber textile worldwide, but we do this thing for us. Anyway, so Venice chapter, the next thing, the Venice chapter is
Charter.
charter sorry, was written almost like 50 years ago, and we thought that maybe we can rewrite this charter again, because normally preservation is much more focused on taxidermy. I mean, the preservation of the shell, the facade. On the right, you see a very famous construction project in Turkey. This is like a kind of preservation project, and it got some awards. But actually, what they preserve is the facade. So inside, you see this demolition. So we preserve this somehow, and this is the photo behind taxidermy. You get everything from inside and come to this point. But anyway, so we are kind of rewriting this Venice charter from scratch in order to redefine how we preserve things, how we transform things, and etc.
And learning from is, it's come from the learning from Las Vegas, then it's Scott Brown and Venturi's in the 60s, and they were like, their main idea was that it's revolutionary to learning from the existing landscape. So we thought that we could use it to reframe the education, because if we don't change the architecture education, whatever we do in the industry, then it doesn't really match. So we thought, okay, would it be possible to rethink a new curriculum for the future of where we put the where we put this transformation of existing structures in the center rather than a like secondary thing.
So maybe there's this new curriculum, and then there might be these new professions who are more focused on repairing and about understanding the existing.
And test drive here, we will use the AI and this kind of new technologies, because we had like thousands of buildings, abandoned buildings, and to test drive the life in them, we used AI. We will use AI technologies to see how they will.
Because when we explained this project, everybody was kind of asking, "Are you going to design all these buildings?" But of course, we are not. Because the idea isn't not about designing; it's about telling the story behind the buildings. But of course, it's I think very important to show some imagination, to put some imagination into all this story. So we thought that since the AI is extremely, this ChatGPT popular right now, we also want to look forward for the future. Maybe we can use AI in order to generate these stories, because the interesting thing is you create this image by writing prompts. It's about, again, writing things. The end product is the image, but the process is writing. So we think that it's very related to this storytelling thing, because you tell a story to the AI and then it generates an image. So we thought that it can be interesting to link these things.
So this is transformers, another section. So here as we started, we were thinking that, okay, we made up this theory, but this is not like, okay, no one is doing transformation things, but everybody is doing that all around the world. It's really famous. So this was a transformation of Elbphilharmonie, the famous project, in 2001 by Herzog de Meuron. They got the Pritzker Award, and in their Pritzker Award speech, they just tell their strategy of transforming Tate Modern, that was their famous building then. And they say it's like an Aikido, you take the energy of the enemy, and then you use it for your own purposes. So enemy here is the existing building. Mm-hmm. And then a couple of years after they made this speech, they started to work on this project in Hamburg, which took like 10 years longer than they expected, and 7 times more than the budget. And it's, in Germany it was like a scandal before it was finished, in the parliament, because it has been constructed by the public money. And at the end, this Aikido strategy, the energy of the enemy and using it for your own purposes, didn't really work, and it would even become a disaster for their own career, because in the last interview they did after the opening of the building in the Guardian, the caption is like, we thought it would destroy us. It is the building, the existing building. So, I mean, we have been transforming buildings, but there are kind of different strategies to transform them.
So this is the Aikido strategy?
Yes.
They define it as an Aikido strategy.
And then 20 years later, another couple, they took a Pritzker Award, Lacaton Vassal, and their famous project was this transformation of 530 dwellings in Bordeaux with Drouot and Hatin. And this is on the left existing, on the right, the new building, and it's their strategy is always transform with and for the inhabitants. So it's quite opposite of the Aikido strategy. And in terms of the images, you know, this image of the facade is like a contemporary design. You wouldn't see it in a like magazine and like be struck, but the story is interesting. The story behind is very interesting. So we thought, because there is like 20 years between these two Pritzker awards, we thought that this change in the main architectural scene is also kind of very related to this, the carryback theory of architecture. And in this section, we will be talking about this, and this is the last one, the pool.
We will be exhibiting some models and images about the pool, since it was like the...
And this is the end.
core.
It's a little bit long, sorry.
Maybe a few things about the exhibition. There will be this cloud at the top, showing all these existing buildings with some YouTube videos and open call images. And while for 2-minute visitors, the cloud is very crucial because they will just pass through and go out of the exhibition. And there is this workbench for the people who will spend more time. We will just expand all these topics on the workbenches, explaining and trying to ask questions. And these are some prototypes, what we are doing. All these images will be like overlapping.
And we also publish a book of the exhibition, not like an exhibition catalog, but like the text about this theory, again with these 15 chapters and a small book. It will be also published in the Biennale. Thank you very much for listening. It's a little bit long. But any questions, comments?
Can I ask, because for me it's very amazing, this project of Burj Al Baba, whatever it is. How is it going now? Because
it's abandoned.
It's still abandoned.
Like a artificial thing. It doesn't happen anywhere in the earth. Now you see this huge amount of these castles in the mountains. So it's still abandoned.
Yeah, after the earthquake, because like a lot of people lost their houses, they started a campaign to use that for earthquake victims. But you know, it's such a weird place to live. I mean, no one would ever move and live there even if they don't have home. They would prefer the tent or the container, you know, instead of those chateaus. It's really weird.
What was the idea to build these chateaus?
I mean, they have these like very rich clients from Gulf countries, and then they did it, you know, but it didn't work out at the end. Exactly, and it didn't work out at the end because it's like packed, you know, with the same thing.
So it was a private.
Yes, of course.
Yes,
that was private. But the other was, the theme park was public, and that's even.
That's even worse because the other one was like private money coming from Gulf countries and etc. Again, they destroyed the forest because there was forest there. But the second one, the theme park, it's extremely huge money, and they also destroyed the public forest in the middle of the city.
And it's during Erdogan's period as Istanbul.
Gökçek, we call it
Gökçek period. It's Ankara.
In Ankara.
It was in Ankara.
For 25 years after Erdogan, there is this guy who ruled the city. And
but
then he lost it after this project.
After this project, he lost it. Because it was really very interesting that the train, while the opening, it stopped, and they had to go out by climbing on. It was a very interesting
and the
image.
were like shooting, and then after 15 days there was the election, and he lost after 25 years. Yeah, everyone was saying it's because of
this Aikido killed him.
Yeah,
it killed him.
It was any other questions, comments?
Other questions.
Yeah.
You guys use transformations. So what can be a difference between transformation and then kind of renovation project?
Arasındaki şeyi sorduk. Difference sorduk.
Transformation and the renovation.
The difference between transformation and renovation. You know, it's when you say renovation, like a historical building, you mean?
Or in general,
Actually, the definition of la Vassal is, they said that there is also always a respect to the existing, but for this preservation, they said that sometimes there is too much respect, because you respect to the existing image, not what happened there, who lived there, what is being done. I mean, you exclude the people. You are just very much focused on the existing image and the structure of the building. But in transformation, it's not about preserving the image or the shelter of the building. It's more about how you can put life into this building. So you can change the facade, you can touch some things, but by giving respect to the user, not only the building, I guess. There's this difference is quite important for us.
example, in Venice Charter, in Article 9, there is this sentence that when the conjecture starts, everything has to stop. Conjecture means, like, if you don't know something, if you just have to guess, okay, there is this wall and the window should be maybe like this. You cannot do it in restoration, it says. You cannot guess, you cannot assume. You have to stop there. But in transformation, you don't really need to do that. As long as you kind of aware of the resources you have, and you use it with that awareness, you can just make it up that window, because it's not a historical thing. You know, whether that discussion, I think, changes between the historical listed and it goes on.
Yes, and also it's about, I think, this, again, the heroic thing, because if it's preserved, then it becomes a hero, because you have to make it live, whatever it costs. Okay, it's extremely important. It's a hero. It's on, like, on a monument. But the other thing, the transformation stuff, is more like the life of the building, not the structure itself or the facade itself. It's more like, I think, including people, or not also only people, but all these living things, I guess.
I find it quite similar to Chronochaos of Rem Koolhaas, you know?
Yes.
I think he also mentioned that we preserve the form of the building, but not the life of it.
Yes, and in Preservation is Overtaking Us. He had this little book with Jose Otero Palios. Yes,
But I remember also Chronochaos
Yes.
was on Venice Biennale.
exactly.
So it's quite similar.
We-
And as Kazus is from Japan, I also found quite interesting that I've seen some interview with, I don't know who, maybe that was Nishizawa, but he said something about Tokyo, that he changed Tokyo after the earthquake with new technologies, new architecture, but the life is still similar somehow, the way how the city lives. So I found something similar with it as well. But here in the Western countries, we truly work more about preservation.
Yeah, but Japan is, I think, it's a very interesting case in terms of demolishing things, because it's part of the culture, I guess. There's a this church which you demolish in every 20 years and you rebuild it, because in order to not to forget how to build the church, because they are preserving the technique, not the building. It's
so that the older one teaches the younger one how to do it. And because otherwise, if the people dies who knows how to do it, then you lost all the technique of that construction.
And in the exhibition, with this Kahramanmaraş building, this one.
Yeah, we have a Japanese thing in the exhibition.
With this building, on the same table, in why demolish thing, we put Nakagin Capsule Tower, because they are very similar in terms of scale, and they are demolished at the same time with Nakagin Capsule Tower. And the story behind demolishing, it's quite similar, because they cannot repair the capsules, they cannot maintain it. Most of the people think that it's ugly, and etc. So the story is quite similar.
And it's not profitable. Capsules are not profitable any longer. If they build a new building, then it's 60% more profitable. And it's the same in this sense. And it's, at the end, it's economics, not being ugly or beautiful. Yes.
So
Any other questions?
I would like to ask you
Yes.
how the government or the city reacted on your emergency model, or like the emergency floating on this. If it's like, because of it's like
It's a set
known and famous, but if like the city plans to use it.
Well, when we did it in 2018, and earthquake was not a hot topic then because we had this huge earthquake now, like a couple of months ago, and then we forgot, you know, in time. So in Turkey, no one really kind of interested. But it was like international and very, even in Taiwan, Esquire, you know, Esquire, that magazine, they published this project. In Turkey, no one published it. And after the earthquake, everyone suddenly was so interested in this project. They found out from the archives and etc. Even Marie Claire Maison, they wanted to publish it, and then we sent everyone who wants it. And then they sent us the published pages that this emergency floating house.
In Marie Claire.
In Marie Claire. And the picture is a floating luxury house from Netherlands, you know? But the text is like all our text, but the picture, and then I think at some point they thought, okay, this is not gonna be like very fitting to our concept, let's put this. And we were like, and it's like Sevinci and Oral, they designed with the universities this luxury thing that
for the earthquake.
For the earthquake, and there is this lady like swimming, and we were like, okay, how come would you do that mistake? And they were like, okay, sorry, we missed the project.
But nobody is interested, so I mean.
And after the municipality changed, we discussed about them, about this earthquake thing. But they were in Turkey, when you say earthquake preparation, it's all about demolishing the buildings and repairing them, or just building the new robust ones, and using earthquake as an excuse. Because if you demolish and rebuild it, then you have one floor up, you know. In Turkey, there's such a thing. If you have a 5-floor building, you can rebuild 6 floors. So it's not because of earthquake, but because to make money and etc. So the only regions in Istanbul they did earthquake renovation in 20 years is the one less risky for earthquake, but more profitable. You know, like more popular neighborhoods. So it's really weird. Yes. And anything else? Any comments, questions? I don't know if we'll be together in a couple of days, but then you can ask anytime, whatever you like.
It was nice.
Thank you. Long but nice.
What year was built this building? It's 90s. So
94.
94.
Yeah,
Yeah, what's the purpose of this building?
It's again a public building.
Yeah.
And this, just make it high. No discounts.
No, it's like, you know, it was.
The thing is that
It's partly demolished, or?
No, it's totally demolished.
totally demolished. No, it's.
I mean, what was the purpose of these columns and all this?
That part, no, because you know, in the area they build it in the city, even in the state, this is the highest building with 18 floors. And then they thought that the architects there, because interviews with the architects, and the architects are like one of the renowned ones, that they won competitions, they're designers, you know. They say, okay, we made that emptiness in the...
elevation.
Exactly.
Yeah, they said since the building is very big, we thought that maybe if we can make holes in it, maybe it seems smaller. But they say it didn't.
But it's funny, but young people loved it because, you know, they say it's the only non-boring thing on the street that we can meet and have ice cream.
Because yeah, the name of the building is Yellow Building, so everybody is. These are the real colors, by the way. These are the real colors of the building. So it's an interesting thing on the city.
And
But
do you think in the case of earthquake, should we survive?
yeah, because this
It took 6 months.
6 months to this demolish. Yeah,
Yeah,
you,
6 months to demolish it.
you see these concrete columns.
Concrete is all petrified.
And there is an architect involved. You know, when there is an architect and engineer involved, because in Turkey, most of the case, you don't have an architect or engineer in the building involved in the design or application.
There is architect, of course, to sign, but just
Not
to sign.
really, yeah, just to
Not
sign.
that, yeah. That's the problem.
Yeah.
You said something that young people like that.
Yeah.
Because I found something similar here, but they like similar age buildings.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But you are the young one. But I think how much it is because it is already old.
They're nostalgic because they were born in the 90s. They're nostalgic. Yeah, could be. Exactly. Yeah.
It's never been built as this ever again.
Yeah,
Looks like an elevated building like that. So that's a mistake.
Yeah.
The value is not just from the mind.
And the building wasn't used at all.
No, it was used, but for the last couple of years it was abandoned, partly, but it was used.
What
But
was inside the flats?
offices,
Offices.
and then a casino, and then a
Casino.
kind of a fun game place for young people.
Very typical.
You know, they banned casinos in the 90s, so.
Casino in the sky.
May I ask one more question? If you have it, if not, you don't have to. But do you have any concept for the workshop that somehow connects with your lecture? The workshop will.
The existing thing. I mean, we saw the courtyard. It's quite beautiful. You were saying that it is like very small, but we really liked it. And it's, you know, you have a lot of things left from other workshops. We didn't see it we didn't notice it in the photos. Some kind of little structures everywhere, like different materials, different ideas, and different stories, you know. When you start to tell them, it's going to make like a whole story of the courtyard. So we think it's quite maybe let's say, if we came here 5 years ago and do this workshop, maybe we wouldn't be really interested with what is already existing in the courtyard, like as we do it now, as much as we do it now. But we are now, because we are working on this topic, maybe very much interested in to focus on the habits. How do you really use it? What you really like, and what the courtyard really needs, or maybe it doesn't need anything. But eventually, because it's an architecture faculty, architects really find some kind of a new need. They are good at finding new needs.
But it's more, since we explained everything that we did, I think we will listen to the students these 3 or 4 days and learn from them. Because we explained what we had, everything almost we did, and listening all these stories, what is happening there, what happened there before, and understanding it, and then maybe putting something, a new story, trying to write a new story.
Are there any topics you would like to experiment one day? For example, we would like to check something to make a research, etc. If you have any topics that you would like to experiment with, and this workshop could be good for it, for example.
We actually put all these topics that we have.
In these you worked on.
Yeah, these are.
Yeah.
If there are any, like, we never tried to.
No.
Somewhere.
We never tried. Do we have something like that?
I guess not, but tomorrow.
But tomorrow we will see, and then, because we have now this first impression, and Adela just explained us a couple of things about the courtyard, but then tomorrow we will listen to the students and you all, and maybe at the end of the day we can have some, okay, this sounds really interesting, maybe we can go on it, but for the moment, we didn't really have preconceived things in our minds.
We generally come to the site with always empty luggage. We don't put some. I mean,
but you still carry the bag.
But we have the bag. But if you start to put something tomorrow, I think it would be interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. If anyone the last question would like to ask. Okay. You will be on the workshop.
Hopefully.
Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Yes.
And patience.